You're listening to Psych with Mike. For more episodes or to connect with the show with comments, ideas, or to be a guest, go to www.psychwithmike.com. Follow the show on Twitter @PsychWithMike or like the Facebook page @PsychWithMike. Now, here's Psych with Mike. Welcome to the Psych with Mike Library. This is Dr. Michael Mahan, and sitting across from me is Mr. Brett Newcomb.
Hello, young man. How are you?
Yeah, well, I'm okay.
Younger man.
Are you feeling better?
Than I used to be?
Well,
than I will be tomorrow?
Than you were 5 minutes ago.
Oh, I'm like Emile Coué, famous French philosopher of the 1920s. I'm getting better and better every day in every way.
Yeah, okay. Well, we've been having, can I say...
Sure.
Bitch? Can I say bitch?
Yeah.
I guess I can do that because it's my podcast.
Yeah, hello. Say whatever you want.
We were having
just don't call me one.
Kind of a bitch session about the state or lack of state of our political system, and it seems like that you're pretty hot about that.
I am.
So, but I guess you don't want to expound on that.
Not if we're going to talk about something productive today.
Yeah. So, So all of the topics that I sent you this week were things that I liked, but really saw more as jumping off points. So I don't think any of them in and of themselves were the nut of what I really wanted to get at, but they were all things that led me to think about other things that I did want to get at.
Well, it's kind of like psychology in general.
Yeah.
Let's just sit around and talk about how many angels can dance on the head of the pin, and
how
which
many?
Ones of those are sick.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'd say 3.
Okay.
How many do you think?
I'm not sure there are angels.
So there you go. Right. So the first thing that caught my eye was this neuroscientist who had put together this list of things that she did to help her to expand her capacity for psychological resilience, which is obviously a really fantastic trait to be able to have. I don't know that I thought that the things that she talked about were a little simplistic, and we'll get into that in a minute, but I think psychological resilience right now is essential.
I would agree. We live in troubled times.
Yeah.
Or remember the ancient Chinese curse, may you live in interesting times?
Mm-hmm.
I think we do.
Yeah. And I don't know that there's a way out of these troubled times because, as we were talking about earlier, it seems like that the structures that are in place to guide us, at least the United States, are paralyzed, and until they break out of that paralysis, then we're all just kind of on the roller coaster, but there isn't anybody monitoring the ride, and so at any moment, the cars could just hurl off of the track, and I don't know there's anything we can do about it.
Well, as a historian, what you try to do is take the long perspective, and you realize that the pendulum swings back and forth.
Right.
There's momentum in the pendulum, and it's moving in the direction of autocratic, right-wing decision-making. We think government should be controlled according to the values of one particular group in the country. Mm-hmm. And the laws should be tailored to fit their comfort zone. And we're moving in that direction. And they're doing it very deliberately, carefully, intelligently, maliciously. In my opinion. Last one is in quotes, my opinion. Mm-hmm. And the pendulum will swing back. And usually when the turning point is reached, there's some incredible trauma.
Right.
Like World War II, the concentration camps.
And that's what I was going to point out is that even though at this stage of the game, I feel pretty despondent about what I see as the future, you know, when you think about the Depression, or you think about world wars, or you think about the, flu pandemic of 1918.
Yeah.
All of these things happen.
Killed 50 million people
right.
worldwide.
And so I don't know if the state that we're in now is anywhere near as perilous as those times. So I think that what feels prescient is you like that word, don't you?
I like words in
Yeah.
general. Amateur lexicographer.
Yeah. Is what is the situation that you're living in, right? So if you're living in the depression, then you're like, oh my gosh, it's never been worse than this. If you're living in the, World War II, then it's like, oh my gosh, there's never been anything worse than this. Right now, this feels really bad, but in the context of the human existence, this is just another step along the pathway.
It's interesting to try to have perspective.
Yeah.
Because if you try to have perspective, however bad we would say things are and the momentum in the direction, right or wrong, that we would support, if you find a place to stand, you have to say there's no place on earth that's better than the United States to live in terms of the freedom of daily activities and choices that you have and the quality of life that comes with that. And I see all kinds of studies all the time that say, well, people in Switzerland do this, and people in Germany have that, and people in Norway have this. And you can find some individual thing, less depression, less suicide, less drinking, what have you, standard of living. But then you can find negatives about it too. But I think at the end of the day, America is still a place most people in the world would want to come and live. It's still a place I want to live. Even if I'm vehemently opposed to parts of the way the system operates, I still have to say I have a good life, I have a safe life, I have a better life than I can envision having anywhere else in the world. And I think more people ought to take a moment and recognize that, however upset and frustrated they're getting about local politics or religion or economics or whatever it is.
Right. And I also tell clients that you have to recognize that the problems that are the biggest problems that you know. Right? And so it doesn't matter whether I'm living in poverty or, and I'm looking at the Kardashians thinking, oh my gosh, how can those people think that they have problems? Well, for the Kardashians, the problems they have are the biggest problems they know. Now, relatively, I would argue those aren't as significant, but they are the biggest problems that those individuals know. So we all have to deal with the problems that are on our plate individually, right? And it doesn't do any good to compare ourselves either better or worse to other people.
Well, I tell clients all the time you can't do comparative misery.
Yeah.
If you're in pain, you're in pain. Your dog died, you're really sad, you're really devastated, you lost your dog, he was your best friend. But you say to me, well, I can't be so upset, I can't be depressed because my next door neighbor's husband died. You can't walk in those shoes. You have to walk in your own.
Yeah.
And the reality is you hurt.
Yeah.
So how much does that hurting disrupt your ability to function, disrupt your ability to plan and move and act in ways that are positive in your own life?
Yeah.
And Albert Schweitzer said, it's better to light a single candle than to curse the darkness.
And one of my favorite Jung quotes is, change can't happen until you accept it. Oppression does not liberate, it oppresses. And so when you look at your own context and you spend a lot of time comparing yourself to other people and then feeling bad about where you are, you're just keeping yourself locked in that place. You can't change what's going on in your life until you accept the responsibility for what's going on in your life.
Yeah, I just this week had occasion to revisit the graduation speech that Steve Jobs gave to Stanford University, in which he said at the opening, as close I ever came to a college degree is the one they're giving me today as an honorarium. But he had three things he wanted people to think about. And one of them was, you're going to die. And you're going to die sooner than you think, and it's not going to be planned. It's just going to happen. And you have to come to grips with that. You have to accept that. We've had conversations in our various podcasts about the death issue as an anxiety-provoking issue in clients everywhere. Most clients at some level are struggling with their fear of death. Even though everybody I know says, oh yeah, I know I'm going to die. So, we all die, and we all do. But I don't personally still accept that. I catch myself thinking about my age and my life expectancy and my general health and all that kind of stuff, knowing that at some point there's going to be a marker that I can't deny that says my death is more imminent. But I could get killed going home today from your house. I don't have any control over that. I don't have any way to avoid it. Everybody wants to go to heaven. Nobody wants to die.
So, going back to this idea of positive psychological resilience,
Yeah.
The list, and I will put this up when I in the show
It's
notes.
about mental discipline.
Yeah, but to me, the thing that is left off of this list is what you and I think are talking about, which is the first step has to be to accept where you're at and stop comparing yourself to other people.
If you can. But we're acculturated in the United States to always make those comparisons. I have a newer car than you do. You have a nicer home than I do. You wear fancier clothes than I do. You have a dog and I don't. That kind of stuff. We constantly are marketed to try to keep up with the Joneses.
Right. But that's an illusion, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, but all
Yeah.
all is illusion. David Copperfield said.
Well, but okay, so I drive a Jeep, and this summer I've only had I take my Jeep apart in May, and I don't put it back together until at least September. And this,
thank God it's September now. You can do it.
I'm not going to though because it's beautiful
Yeah.
outside. But this year, and I rate the how much I've enjoyed the summer by how many times I've had to put my Jeep together, right? So like if it rains or something,
You actually
I've only
spend
had to
time
do that.
thinking about this stuff.
Yeah, I've only had to do that one time this year. But the point being, I love my car. I mean, and I see people
Yeah.
driving Maseratis.
Yeah.
I see people driving Lamborghinis. I don't want to drive those. So that's the thing is that people have to figure out what intrinsically makes you happy. Stop looking at
Yeah.
everything that everybody else has and say, is there something
But
that
it's an uphill
you
battle.
could have?
My point is it's
Yeah.
an uphill battle because we are acculturated to that by all the mass media marketing, but also by the scripts that we're taught in childhood.
And that's, I think, the scripts in childhood are essential.
Yeah.
And so, do you believe that it is possible for people to genuinely look at those scripts, objectively identify them, and ask themselves, is this beneficial to me or is this hurtful?
I believe it's possible, but I think it takes some real encouragement and some learning, a
Yeah.
learning curve to say, where do I stand so that I can look at this more objectively, pull my head out and look around. I used to talk to adolescent clients all the time about if you want to control the script of your life or the destiny of your life, you need to get in the front seat of your life and drive. If you visualize your life as a car, you have always been a passenger in the back seat. Someone else has always been driving. It's been your parents, it's been the school district, it's been the local community, it's been your sports team, whatever. They have guided you and directed you and made choices for you. If you don't like that, they've even help you internalize a script that they wrote for you. And if you want your life to be different, then you need to get in the front seat and drive. So that requires some attitudinal changes and some behavioral changes.
Right.
One of the attitudinal changes is self-ownership, responsibility, A-B-I-L-I-T-Y. I have the ability to respond to circumstances as I choose.
Right.
But they come at a cost.
Right.
And I have to be willing to pay the cost in order to reap the benefits.
And that's the rub.
Yeah.
Is that everybody wants to be free.
Everybody wants to get to heaven. Nobody wants to die.
Nobody
Yeah.
wants to take responsibility for
Exactly.
it. I tell clients all the time, I'm one of the freest people in the world. I don't answer to a boss. I have enough money to be able to go on vacation if I want to, but I don't do those things very often because if I go on vacation, I don't get paid. And so the freest person in the world is the person who is willing to take the most responsibility for their own life.
As a philosophical conception.
Sure. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
and yes, and I understand that if you're an adolescent, you may not be able to be completely free because you're not legally an adult. There's still going to be the expectation that you have to attend school and things like that. So all of us live within certain constraints, but we're always going to be as free as we are willing to take responsibility for. No one's ever going to create more freedom for themselves by taking less responsibility.
So then you have the question, is biology destiny? What if I am from a family of diabetics and my biology says, well, you're going to be diabetic. What if I'm from a family that has heart problems or cancer, breast cancer, and I'm female? 6 of my sisters and 2 of my grandmothers and have all had breast cancer. Well, and then I look at that and think, well, why should I even bother? Why should I even try? Because I'm just going to be diabetic with a heart problem and breast cancer.
Well,
and I'm gonna die.
so you can't take responsibility for the genetics because that's outside your control.
Well, but you can take responsibility for the way you live.
Exactly.
You can watch your diet.
Exactly.
You can exercise.
Right.
You can take reasonable medical interventions. Get vaccinated. There are things you can do to maximize your chances.
And, this is a kind of a touchy subject, but one of the things that I don't like about the trend I see in society is this catering to the individual. And the idea that, and the reason that I don't like that is because I think it gives all of us too much authority to feed our own victim script, right? So diabetes is a huge problem in the United States. Well, is it? Actually, obesity is a huge problem in the United States. Obesity leads to diabetes in a lot of cases. And so a lot of times people could control their diabetes by controlling their weight, but then you can't eat the upsized Happy Meal at McDonald's, which you should have the right to do. And so it's about being able to take responsibility for those things within the confines of the things that you don't control. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely.
And I just don't think that people do that. And I think that the reason is because, yes, the scripting that we get is we cater to the individual. Everybody has the right to their own opinion, which I agree with. Everybody does have the right to their own opinion.
But they don't have their right to their own facts.
Right. Well, but even if they do, we used to
no matter what Kelly and Conway said. Well,
we used to have this idea that you couldn't go to a crowded movie theater and shout fire and watch people get trampled in the exits, that was not your right. You didn't have the right, even in freedom of speech, to create a dangerous situation. But now we have individuals who can say, I don't want to get vaccinated, even if that puts other people who can't get vaccinated at risk. It's my God-given right to not be vaccinated. I don't particularly agree with that. I think that it's all of our right and our responsibility to cater to the individuals who can't help themselves. You have the right, which is natural law, to do anything you want to do up until the point where your right to do that starts to affect someone else's rights.
Yeah.
And I don't think that we have that as our overarching guiding light. In
culturally emphasize rights over responsibilities.
Yeah.
I mean, we have probably the best army in the world, but it's 2% of the population and they're all volunteers. Mm-hmm. So 98% of the population doesn't serve or know anybody that does serve.
Right, and that's I think that you have now made actually a really, really excellent point, which is we all want to have more rights, but we don't want to take responsibility.
And we're not propagandized in that direction.
Right.
We aren't taught from childhood, look for your responsibilities.
Right.
We're taught from childhood. As a school teacher, I had kids coming in and said, my parents told me I don't have to do this. I have a right. I have a right to do whatever they want to do. Mm-hmm. And you can't make me. Mm-hmm. And the parents will show up and say, well, you can't make them do that. You can't make him wear a mask.
Let's take our break. We'll come back and we'll talk more about this. Hey, Brett, if you were going to tell somebody to check out something on the internet to help them with their mental health, what would you tell them?
I'd tell them to listen to Psych with Mike.
Why would you tell them that?
Because it's probably one of the most easily listenable experiences you can have that will give you information that's useful for a whole spectrum of concerns that people have.
I agree, and I have actually been told that by at least a dozen people, several of whom were not married to me, and some of them didn't even know me.
That's amazing.
That is amazing. It's when we get that kind of feedback from people, it is so incredibly humbling and overwhelming for me.
It is for both of us.
Yeah. So we really appreciate it. And as always, if it's Friday, it's Psych with Mike. Okay, we're back. And so, there was a period of time when it was okay for a leader of a country to say, ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. Mm-hmm. If somebody said that today, what do you think the reaction would be?
I think they would say, yeah, amen, I'm all for that. I'm happy to tell you how to live your life. Don't you try to tell me how to live mine. So I would say, most people would say, well, I'm a good Christian. I believe in that. I'm a patriot. And all these other liberal idiots are not.
See, I think that people would lose their minds. If a government leader got up and said today, ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country, I think people would say the government does not have the right to tell me what to do.
I think you're wrong. If it's structured as a patriotic duty, if a cause is made, like World War II, save the world for democracy, we're going to kill the evil Nazi behemoth. Everybody signed up to go.
Well,
they all volunteered.
Yes, because
not all of them, a lot of them drafted.
In a situational reality where that happened, then I agree.
So it depends on the marketing.
Okay. Well, but I just think about people are adamant that, or some people are adamant that they're tracking devices.
That's one of the buzzword phrases that has sway in today's world, in today's America. I have rights. I have freedom. It's all about freedom. I'd rather die than lose my freedom. So you can't tell me that I can't scratch my nose in a restaurant or shave in an airport restaurant. So there are minimalization of standards of civil intercourse, all in service of this buzzword of freedom. But the buzzword needs to change. We need to rewrite the script. If we want to have different outcomes, we got to put different input into it in our families, in our churches, and our schools.
And, okay, I don't disagree with that, but what I wonder is, do we any longer have the capacity as individuals to think critically and logically? Because if there's a tracking mechanism in the virus, the issue that I have with that is, number one, let's not even talk about what the actual logistics of putting a tracking mechanism in a virus and then tracking each individual would be. I don't even want to get into that. But as a function of 9/11, we know for a fact that the federal government said we're going to put tracking mechanisms in every single cell phone that is sold in the United States, and so the rest of the world went along with it. And we know that that's happened ever since 9/11, so we know there's a tracking device in every single cell phone that is manufactured and purchased in across the entire world. You have a guarantee of a tracking device in your cell phone, but you won't leave your cell phone at home. But you're worried about getting a vaccine because it might have a tracking device in it. And I just want to say, can people recognize the logical fallacy of that? Or is that impossible nowadays?
They can, but many of them stubbornly refuse to. And there are logical tricks that can be used to increase that sway. Whataboutism is a good logical trick. You raise a question that's uncomfortable for me to answer. Hey, does your church believe this? Do you believe this? Your church believes this. What do you think? Well, if I answer that, I become discomforted. So rather than answer that question, I turn it on you and say, well, what about? What about this that you believe? And so I never directly have to answer it. I never directly have to have facts. I never have to have evidence. I just have to have an opinion and an emotional sway. And so people are getting away with sloppy thinking, undisciplined thinking. They're not taught inductive and deductive reasoning. They're not taught the difference between fact and opinion the way that they used to be. They're propagandized. and they are emotionally manipulated in service of some agenda.
So the only issue that I kind of have with the idea of fact versus opinion is that when we really believed in facts, there were essentially three major networks, and most people got the majority of their news from a newspaper, which you didn't know. I mean, if they printed something, you assumed that it was accurate because you believed in their integrity. And I don't know, with the internets and anybody can produce anything that they want to in print and whatever, I don't know that I think that was as pure as sometimes it feels like it was. So I'm not sure. What I'm saying is, I think there was as much propaganda in the 1950s and 60s as there is today. Yeah. We just believed more in the sources, whether that was
Uncle Walter.
Yeah.
He wouldn't lie to us.
Right.
But he did.
And so what I really am interested in are individuals being able to track the logical fallacy.
But do they do it? I mean,
they
here
don't.
You go. Somebody that did 10 minutes worth of research on Google about viruses or vaccinations and all the different disparate claims that are out there, and they read about that. So now they're thinking there's a huge movement in the direction of getting yourself dewormed with horse dewormer in order to defeat and avoid COVID. And they're putting that Google research against the advice of scientists and physicians who've studied this issue in the labs for decades and have experience and data out the wazoo about the comparative risk factors and percentage of optional progress. And I say, I just don't believe Dr. Fauci anymore because I think he's corrupt. He's sold out. I don't believe all these doctors because they're getting paid for putting COVID as a cause of death on the death certificate. They get extra money if they say, oh, he died from COVID. Well, that's factually not true, but I've heard that for 2 years now. So we say things that present the message. My opinion is as good as your opinion, and it doesn't matter if you went to school. There's a huge anti-intellectual movement in America today, especially in conservative America. Just because you went to college doesn't mean you know something. Just because you have a degree doesn't make you smart. I didn't go to college. I'm really smart. I can make my own decisions. Get out of my way. I have freedoms.
And I don't even deny that. I say, yes, of course you have freedoms, and you have the right to...
And you can be smart in your own right.
Sure, absolutely. But
Darwin
I'm just
will win in the end.
Wondering, when did we lose the ability to say, well, even though I have the right to refuse to get vaccinated, it would be better for not only society, but the world for me to get vaccinated, because the only way that we're going to get coronavirus under control is if enough people develop immunity, so I'm going to get vaccinated. That's what I'm wondering. Yes, you have the right to refuse. Absolutely. I believe in that 100%.
But realistically, you break it down. So the argument is the government can't make me do it. The government can't tell me I have to get a vaccination. So I'm not going to do it. To hell with all of you. Well, here's some evidence, here's some facts, here's some data. 98% of the people who are dying from COVID today are unvaccinated. 2% are vaccinated, and they have specific medical exceptions. So 98% are dying. I don't care. I don't believe in it. I'm not going to get one. You can't make me get one. I won't get one. Okay. So then your employer says, well, you can't work here. You can't get a paycheck if you don't get one. Okay, I'll get one. Then your insurance company says, well, you don't get one. You're going to have to pay a premium for health insurance, and you're going to have to pay all of the costs that are COVID related. Okay, I'll get one. Your government can't tell me, but a capitalist organization can tell me, and I just bowl right over and say, yeah, sure, that makes sense. I'll get that because I don't want to miss a paycheck. I don't want to have to pay for insurance. I just want to have rights. You explain that to me.
But, okay, so I agree, again, that you have the right, but do you not also have the right to...
When my boss says, you can't work here if you're not vaccinated.
Right.
When a restaurant says, you can't come in here unless you're vaccinated.
I even kind of get the economics of it. I don't necessarily agree with it, but I understand why that would be persuasive for people. But what
I
I'm
don't have a
saying
problem
is,
with it at all.
why don't people feel like they have either the right or the responsibility to do things that are going to contribute to the overall public welfare?
So I think you're doing the whataboutism argument again.
Oh.
We're on a track. I mean, for years, people have read a sign on the door of a building that says no shoes, no shirt, no service. They put on a shirt, they put on shoes, they go in or they don't go in. They say, well, I'm not going to shop there because I can't go in barefoot and shirtless. No big deal. Now, no mask, they want to get their guns and shoot the workers and create havoc and say, I got a right to not wear a mask. You're doing something horrible here. How's that different from no shoes, no shirt, no service?
It isn't. It isn't different, in my opinion, and that's why I'm wondering why we're in this place where it feels like that we're just kind of locked up as a society, and why we can't just break through this and say, okay, if it clearly is for the public benefit, which getting vaccinated is clearly for the public benefit, then why can't people just say, I'm going to do that even though I have the right not to? I'm going to choose to do it because it's for the public benefit. Like, I'm not afraid of coronavirus. I'm really not afraid of getting coronavirus. I don't think that I would get very sick, but I got vaccinated because I believe that it's for the public good. I wear a mask even today, even when most people aren't wearing a mask when I go to public places indoors, because I believe that that's for the public good. I don't do it for me. I do it for the public good.
Well, but you do it for you because it's your definition of being a good citizen.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
All behaviors are in service of the self.
That's true. I agree with that. Yeah. So how do we, because I don't believe that any of us are going to be, I don't believe that the majority of us are going to be able to find greater psychological flexibility until we break through this, until we allow ourselves to take responsibility. I think that, as you started off by saying correctly, in my opinion, that's the key. The freest person in the world is the person who's willing to accept the most responsibility. And how do we encourage people to do that? Is there a way?
There are ways, but they take effort and planning and thoughtfulness. And you have to have a strategic map and a scripted message that makes sense to people, that people can be encouraged to embrace and internalize. And right now, that's not where the pendulum is swinging. We have to go. We're very parallel right now historically with the robber barons and the muckrakers of the 1890s and early 1900s. You have all these super mega wealthy billionaire people in the world and in America, and they get to do the things that they want to do and get away with it because the rules are made to have exceptions for them. When you look at the family that owned the pharmacies that the Sackler family,
Purdue Pharma.
They're walking away with no penalties for what they admit that they have done. One of them was quoted today saying, "I don't see anything we did wrong."
And the judge was chastising people who didn't want him to sign off on it, saying, "You don't understand. This is the best deal that we could possibly negotiate." And I disagree with that intently.
Well, then you come back to the strategy of picking the right judge.
Yeah.
Do you venue shop? Does it make a difference? Can you bring a case?
Well, I mean, I guess that's why you have appeal, right? Is that so that guy's one opinion doesn't get to be the opinion for the entire universe. And I'm sure that this will get appealed, but he genuinely believes.
There are 17 state attorneys general right now. They're saying they're going to appeal it. But again, it's the complexities of the law and the way the laws are written. But it's not the question that you asked. The question that you ask is there a way that we can encourage people to be more responsible members of a community and act to
contribute
serve
to the public
that
good.
community.
And some people in
And be less selfish.
in that lawsuit said, well, we're getting billions of dollars for treatment,
right.
and so that is in service
So
of the public good. And that's a persuasive argument to me. If people genuinely believe that, and if the judge genuinely believed that, that actually is a persuasive argument to me. I still would disagree with his, because I think the Sacklers should have been responsible. They should have not been immune from any other legal, filings just because they agreed to pay billions of dollars, which was apparently like 2% of their total income.
Yeah, like a bribe.
Yeah. So, okay, so it would take a well thought out, concerted effort, but it is possible
And a
to
coherent
try.
message. You can't get sidetracked by somebody yelling, well, what about this and what about that? And I know something you did wrong. It's not about perfection. It's about persuasion. It's about messaging. It's about scripting. And I think the pendulum has swung past that to a more extreme venue. And I know it will swing back.
So it can't stay there.
No, it won't.
We're in an uncomfortable place
stays there.
right now, but it's going to come back. It
Yeah.
has to.
Right.
Okay. Well, that makes me feel a little bit better.
Oh, good.
All right. Hopefully that was good for people. If you have any questions or comments, as always, you can reach us at psychwithmike.com. We certainly encourage everybody to go on the YouTube, search Psych with Mike, and subscribe to the show. That is always beneficial. The music that appears in Psych with Mike.
You also know that we didn't go through the 6 exercises that the neuroscience.
But I'll post them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just reminding me to do that.
Yeah. But the music that appears in Psych with Mike is written and performed by Mr. Benjamin DeClue. And as always, if it's Friday, it's Psych with Mike.